Hello and welcome to Life Rhythms, Tarot, Food, and Spirit. We've been a little bit more involved with the food element of this channel the last couple of days. At least it's kind of woken me up a little bit as I've taken a little time away from making videos over the last couple of weeks. Anyway, so it's Easter Sunday, which if you watched my video yesterday on the wheat berry pie, it's not really a container, a spiritual container I hold for myself, but in terms of having it as a container to remind me of family and cultural traditions, we're just marking, you know, this time, and it's a time when people will generally, naturally think of gathering. You know, I like to take advantage of that, if you will. So we're just having a friend or two over this evening, and we are going to prepare a leg of lamb, which was actually not traditional in my household, but was traditional in many Italian households, and even in some other parts of my family, they had lamb quite a bit, but not in my mother's family. And it was with my mother's family that we mainly spent our holidays that marked the Christian calendar. So I normally do our leg of lamb. We normally season it with the mixture of anchovies and capers and parsley pounded with garlic. And that was my plan until my beloved and I discussed the wine for the evening, which is, we're going to take it from here, and it inspired me to change up how we're seasoning the lamb. Take it.
Take it. Where am I taking it?
Describe the wine a little bit.
So this is what's called an orange wine, and some wine that is orange wine is actually orange in color, but basically, an orange wine is a white wine that's made the same way that you would make a red wine, which means that the juice from
getting a whole lesson.
Skin, the pressing of the skins, sits in contact with the skins, which imparts mostly color, but it also imparts tannins and flavors and structure and complexity. So the longer the juice sits in contact with the skins, the more color then gets leached into the juice. And so you can make an orange wine with the pressed white clear wine, because all liquid pressed out of a grape is clear. It can be in contact with the skins for a couple hours, or in the case of one winemaker, Abe Schoner, who makes Scullion Project, it can stay in contact with the skins for about 4 years now. I think Abe has a Chenin that's still in skin contact in barrel.
How about this wine, baby, that we're having tonight? We're going to have a whole segment, Tarot, Food, Spirit, and Seth on wine.
So this is made by Paolo Bea, who's an Italian producer in Umbria. And this is one of his white blends. It's called Santa Chiara, and it's a blend of 5 different grapes, and it usually changes, but this year it's Ricchetto, Malvasia, Garganega, Sauvignon, and Chardonnay, 20% each. It sits on the skins for, I think, a little bit less than a month. And what you're going to get is this beautiful sort of salmon, pinkish, deep hue to it.
How about the flavors?
The flavors taste like strawberries.
They do not.
Peaches. Soaked in the waning moon of Tuscan sun. So it's definitely, it changes, and I haven't had this vintage, but we've had this wine before. It's one of our favorites, and it just struck me yesterday when I was trying to figure out what was I feeling about drinking with the lamb. It made me feel, I don't know, it's been a weird year. Winter won't quite go away, which I'm actually quite happy about. Spring won't actually arrive. I'm hoping that will delay the dreaded summer. And so I wanted something sort of spring but cold, and to me this kind of is a wine that can capture that. It's also a wine that we've had down in South Carolina in the middle of summer with barbecue that went really, really well. So it can sort of house that summer refreshing kind of quality. But this to me is sort of like spring not quite here yet. And I kind of wanted to, I felt that. So
why do you think it's going to work with the, so I chose to long interlude here. So instead of doing our traditional seasoning for the lamb.
Please, long interlude. Her videos are like 8 hours. It's like Tarkovsky time. And you guys stick through this, so I'm not concerned that you will have clicked off yet.
I'm doing more of a North African spice rub. So we've got cumin seed, coriander seed, kind of my classic favorite spice region to work with. Some cinnamon, turmeric, a little bit of paprika, and then we've got garlic and some lemon peel. And then the lamb will be seasoned and then roasted on just a bed of thinly sliced onions, and we'll actually put some dates in there as well. So we've got kind of this complexity of flavor.
Yes, which I did not know. I was going off of the anchovy caper idea in my head, and took this, when you pick a wine for food, you've got two choices. You can complement or you can contrast the flavors. And the decision to go one way or the other is entirely dependent upon your mood. So I was feeling the sort of salty sharpness of the anchovy caper, and I wanted something a little bit rounder, broader, but it also will work with the African spice. It'll just change kind of the emotionality of the evening. And that's really sort of what wine and food, I think, pairing kind of elicits. The final, equation is the emotion of it. Mm-hmm. So don't be afraid to experiment with wine and food. They were made for each other.
Exactly.
Contrary to what anybody else wants to tell you, wine was made for food. And probably food was made for the reason to drink wine. So there's some synergy there.
So he will proceed with rubbing this lamb, which we're a bit delayed on doing. It's a beautiful 4.5-pound boneless leg of lamb. So the spices will sit on there a bit shorter than one might like. Overnight would have been fantastic.
It's just Tony.
It's just going to be a few hours before we roast it, but the flavors are strong enough that it's going to get into the body of the lamb. And so we're going to have that, and then we're actually going to braise some carrots. And how is braising different than boiling? We'll do it the technique exactly as you would do a traditional braise. We'll softly caramelize the carrots in a little bit of butter, and then add the liquid, and to that I'm going to add a few cardamom pods, and which will also complement this kind of North African feeling, if you will, for the evening. And as I was thinking about this, I also I found it interesting. I was having the thought that most of the people who you guys see me with on camera are the men in my life, and I certainly have...
How many men in your life do you have?
My father, my brother, and my women family certainly throw down in the kitchen. But it just so happens that I think somewhat unusually, most of the men in my life are very competent and actually enjoy being in the kitchen, and I think that's an
I like
interesting.
to eat, and I don't actually like to touch it.
I think I found that somewhat interesting, in terms of people you have around you and some elements that are important to one consciously or unconsciously, how that's worked out. So I hope that whatever you're doing, you are enjoying your weekend and the slow but perhaps steady approach of spring, and these holidays or celebrations around this time are really ultimately meant to mark rebirth, the renewal of life, and hopefully some fertility in mind, body, and spirit. And I hope that you're bringing that forward in whatever way works for you. And until we meet again, thank you for watching and listening, and be well.